Distant 1979 was a glorious year. It was the year of several revolutions. The Soviet hockey team took the Challenge Cup from the NHL team, it snowed for half an hour in the Sahara, and Jimmy Carter was attacked by a rabbit. And 3 weeks before the memorable rabbit attack, the largest nuclear power plant accident in the United States and, at the time, in the world, occurred. The disaster put an end to American nuclear power and showed that the atom, though peaceful, is not to be trifled with. 3 Mile Island nuclear accident. The first nuclear accident. Site: Unit 2 at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant on the island of the same name on the Susquehanna River, 16 kilometers south of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, USA. Date: March 28, 1979, about 4 a.m. Causes. 2 causes of the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant disaster can be identified. The trigger for the accident was a failed feed pump for the reactor's second cooling circuit. The accident was caused by an incredible combination of a number of technical failures, jammed valves, incorrect instrument readings, failure of several pumps, gross violations of repair and operating rules, and the notorious human factor. People encountering such an accident for the first time were simply confused. They had no proper training. No one at the time was prepared for this kind of contingency or understanding of what was going on. The situation was exacerbated by the instruments that lied so infallibly and a large number of technical problems. So that's why we got what we had, the first serious accident at a nuclear power plant, which before the tragic events at Chernobyl was the largest in the world. Chronicle of events. The accident at Unit 2 of the nuclear power plant began at about 4 in the morning of March 28, and the fight for the reactor lasted until late afternoon, but the danger was not fully eliminated until April 2. The chronicle of the accident is vast, but it is worthwhile to review only its key events. Approx. 4 a.m. The secondary circuit feed pump stopped, as a result of which the water circulation stopped, and the reactor started overheating. This is where the main event that started the accident happened. Due to a gross mistake made during repairs, the emergency pumps of the secondary circuit did not start. It later turned out that the repair technicians had not opened the head gates, but the operators could not see that because the pump status indicators on the control panel were simply covered by repair plates. The first 12 seconds after the accident, the increase in temperature and pressure in the reactor triggered the emergency protection system, which shut down the nuclear boiler. A little earlier, the safety valve was triggered, which began to release steam and water from the reactor. It had accumulated in a special vessel, the barbitor. However, when the valve reached normal pressure, for some reason it did not close, which was noticed only 2.5 hours later. During this time the barbitor overflowed, the safety membranes on it burst because of the critical pressure level, and the rooms of the containment began to fill with superheated steam and hot radioactive water. 4:02 a.m. The reactor emergency cooling system went off, water began to flow into the core, which also entered the containment through the bubbler because the valve did not close. 4:05 a.m. The first gross mistake of the operators. Even though the reactor was almost empty, the instruments showed that there was too much water in it, so the operators gradually shut down all the emergency pumps pumping water into the primary circuit. 4:08 a.m. The operators finally discovered that the emergency pumps for the second circuit were not working, but running them did not do much to remedy the situation. Up until 6:18 a.m., people, relying on incorrect instrument readings and, at the same time, for some reason not noticing other important indicators that spoke to the nature of the accident, tried to identify the problem and performed various actions, but only made the situation worse. As a result, the reactor core, deprived of cooling, started literally melting, even though the nuclear chain reaction had already stopped. The overheating was caused by the decay of highly active uranium fission products. This is precisely why a nuclear reactor cannot be stopped immediately, in an instant. It was not until 6:18 a.m. that a visiting engineer determined the true cause of the accident, and the release of water from the reactor core was stopped. However, the emergency cooling pumps that had been stopped 2 hours earlier managed to start up for various reasons only at 7:20 a.m., which averted the catastrophe. The special boron water that was pumped into the core stopped the core heating and further damage. The accident seemed to have been averted, and the reactor could now be shut down completely. However, already on the day of March 28, it became clear that a huge hydrogen bubble had formed in the reactor vessel, which could burst and explode at any second. Such an explosion at a nuclear power plant would lead to a terrible disaster. But where did this hydrogen come from? It was formed by the reaction of red-hot zirconium with red-hot water vapor, which literally disintegrated into oxygen and hydrogen atoms. The oxygen oxidized the zirconium, and the free hydrogen accumulated under the reactor lid, forming an explosive bubble. In the evening at 7:50 p.m., one of the primary pumps managed to get back online, which worked for only 15 seconds, but this soon made it possible to get the rest of the pumps running and restore more or less normal operation of the primary circuit of the reactor cooling system. The operators kept working to remove the hydrogen from under the reactor lid until April 2, which was successful, and the danger of an uncontrolled breakdown was completely eliminated. Interestingly, at 6:30 a.m. the operators wanted to conduct a reconnaissance inside the containment, so to speak, to look at the accident from the inside, but the plant management did not give permission to go out. As it turned out later, this saved people from imminent death by that time. The radiation background in the rooms of the containment exceeded the norm by hundreds of times. And already on April 1, US President Jimmy Carter himself visited the 3 Mile Island station and reassured people that there was no danger. And if you believe the official data, there really was no danger, but people's excitement over the accident is understandable. The consequences of the accident. It is surprising, but the accident at 3 Mile Island had no serious consequences for human health and the environment, but it had the most serious impact on the minds of people and the American nuclear power industry. Yet, despite this, it wasn't until 1993 that all the remediation work was completed. Core damage. Temperatures in the reactor during the accident reached 2,200 degrees, resulting in the melting of about half of all core components. In absolute figures, it amounts to almost 62 tons. Radioactive contamination. A large amount of radioactive water leaked out of the reactor, resulting in a level of radioactivity in the containment more than 600 times higher than normal. Some radioactive gases and steam entered the atmosphere, and as a result each resident of the 16-kilometer zone around the plant received no more radiation than during a fluorography session. The most dangerous thing, releases of high-activity nuclides into the atmosphere and water, was avoided, so the area remained clean. The collapse of the U.S. nuclear power industry. After the accident at 3 Mile Island, the U.S. decided not to build any more nuclear power plants, which led to stagnation in the U.S. nuclear power industry. People's psychology and the Chinese syndrome. By an amazing coincidence, 2 weeks before the accident, the movie The Chinese Syndrome was released on the big screens and tells the story of the nuclear disaster. The jargon term Chinese syndrome, coined in the 1960s by nuclear physicists, means an accident in which the fuel in a reactor melts and burns through the containment. But it was melting of the reactor core that took place at 3 Mile Island Unit 2. So there is nothing strange that after the actual accident there was panic, and no assurances of higher-ranking officials, including the US president himself, could not give people any final reassurance. Current status. 3 Mile Island continues to operate at present. Unit 1, which was undergoing maintenance at the time of the accident and was launched in 1985. Unit 2 is closed, the reactor interior is completely removed and disposed of, and the site is monitored. The plant will remain in operation until 2034. Interestingly, in 2010, the turbine generator from the failed Unit 2 was sold, removed and transported in parts to the Sheeran-Harris Nuclear Power Plant, North Carolina, USA, where it took its place in the new unit. Surprising? Not at all. After all, the equipment had been in operation for only 6 months, and during the accident it was undamaged and was not contaminated, not to lose many millions of dollars of good things. What has been done to prevent something like this from happening again? One of the results of the investigation of the accident causes is the understanding that the plant operators were simply not prepared for the accident. This problem was solved by reconsidering the concept of NPP operator training. If previously the emphasis had been on people analyzing the situation and finding their own solutions, now operators were taught to work primarily on prepared scenarios of accidents. Similar accidents. 7 years later an accident occurred in the USSR, which literally and figuratively eclipsed the 3 Mile Island incident, the infamous Chernobyl disaster of April 26, 1986. Interestingly, the course of both accidents was similar, but in the fourth unit of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant something happened that the Americans did not. There was an explosion with the most serious consequences. The accident at 3 Mile Island also pales in comparison with the accident at Fukushima, which occurred in Japan during the tsunami and earthquake of March 11, 2011. Both the Japanese and Soviet accidents are still quite troubling, and it is to be hoped that the world will not see more nuclear disasters. If you were interested, thank the author by putting a like. And also do not forget to subscribe so as not to miss the outputs of even more interesting videos of my channel. Turn on notifications by clicking on the bell and share this video with your friends. What else interesting can you add to this video? Write in the comments, it will be interesting to read.